Humanity's fleet drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek ships gliding across the stars like shadows. The fleet, a powerful force assembled by Earth's greatest minds and warriors, had explored countless star systems, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to encounter. Captain Elias Grant stood on the bridge of the flagship Vanguard, his eyes scanning the holographic display in front of him. His crew moved with quiet efficiency around him, but there was an air of tension. They had received a mysterious signal, one that no one could trace or decipher. It was as if it had appeared from nowhere, coming from a remote, uncharted area of the galaxy. The message was simple, but it left an uneasy feeling in the air. "We are the ancients. We know what you are." Those words haunted Grant. Who were these ancients, and what did they mean by knowing humanity? Were they friends, or did they pose a threat to Earth's fleet? Grant had ordered the fleet to change course immediately. They would go to the source of the signal and find out the truth. But the uncertainty of it all gnawed at him. As they approached the coordinates, the feeling of isolation grew. The stars around them seemed to dim, swallowed by the sheer emptiness of this unknown sector. The fleet's sensors scanned the space ahead, but no sign of any ships, no asteroids, nothing. It was as if the signal had come from a void. "Captain, we're in the right position," reported Lieutenant Marla Briggs, the fleet's chief navigator. "The signal is originating from somewhere close, but there's nothing here. It's like it's coming from within a dead system." Grant nodded, his mind racing. "Stay alert, everyone. Prepare for any scenario. We don't know what we're dealing with." The fleet's ships moved cautiously, gliding into the center of the empty star system. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. It felt like they were trespassing on something old, forgotten by time. Then suddenly, the silence broke. A giant object appeared on the fleet's scanners. It was massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever built. A ship, but not like any ship they knew. It was ancient, covered in strange markings, its design completely foreign. The size alone was enough to make every officer on the bridge pause in awe. "Is that a ship?" Briggs asked, her voice barely a whisper. Grant squinted at the display. "Yes, but that's not possible. How could something this big be out here, and why have we never detected it before?" The crew continued to observe, captivated by the sight of the enormous vessel. As the fleet drew closer, a signal began to pulse from the ship. A soft, faint light flickered in the darkness, as if the ship was waking up. Grant's breath caught in his chest. This was no ordinary encounter. Whatever lay ahead, it was going to change everything. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Briggs said, breaking the tension. "It's a message. It's from them. The ancients." Grant nodded. "Open the channel." A figure appeared before them, a holographic image flickering to life in front of the entire bridge. The figure was tall, elegant, and their presence was overwhelming. The figure spoke with an ancient, commanding tone. "We are the ones who came before. We have been waiting for you." The figure's words echoed through the Vanguard's bridge. Its voice was calm but filled with an ancient power that made everyone on the crew stand still. Captain Elias Grant felt a chill crawl down his spine. He wasn't sure if it was the grandeur of the moment or the sheer mystery of the being in front of him. The holographic figure, tall and graceful, wore a long cloak that shimmered with unfamiliar patterns. Its eyes glowed faintly, and a sense of timelessness surrounded it, as if this being had lived for eons and seen things no human could ever imagine. "We are the ones who came before," the figure continued. "We have watched you, Earth. We have watched you grow, struggle, and rise from the ashes of your own past. Now, you are ready." Grant tried to keep his composure. "Ready for what?" he asked, his voice steady, though a part of him was brimming with questions. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though considering the question before responding. "To join us, to learn what we know, to understand the true nature of the universe. But first, you must prove yourselves." "Prove ourselves," Grant repeated, his brow furrowing. "We don't need any more tests. Humanity has already proven its strength." The figure's eyes flickered with something like amusement, though it was difficult to tell from the cold, mysterious expression. "It is not strength you must prove, Captain. It is wisdom. Wisdom to know when to fight, when to learn, and when to walk away." Grant's mind raced. There was something unsettling about the ancients' calm demeanor, like they were testing something deeper than just military prowess. Something more personal, perhaps. "We have no intention of being judged," Grant said, his voice firm. "If you came to help, then tell us how. We're not interested in games." The figure remained silent for a moment, studying him. Then it spoke again. "You misunderstand, Captain. It is not us who will judge you. It is you who will judge yourselves. Your future lies not in power, but in choice. Will you continue on your path, guided by your own hands, or will you let the past decide your fate?" Grant felt uneasy, as though he was standing on the edge of a great precipice. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a challenge, one that could change everything humanity had ever known. The silence stretched, broken only by the low hum of the ship's systems. The ancient ship loomed in the distance, its strange, majestic form almost beckoning them closer. The fleet, though ready for action, was frozen in place, unsure of how to proceed. Finally, Captain Grant spoke, breaking the tense quiet. "What do you want from us? You've sent the signal. You've spoken your words. What's next?" The figure's eyes flickered again, its voice soft but commanding. "Next. You prove your worth, Captain. The first test begins now." Before Grant could respond, a new message appeared on the ship's screen. A series of complex symbols, unfamiliar and alien, began to blink one by one. It was a code, a puzzle. The figure's voice continued, "Solve it, or risk losing everything." The tension in the air thickened as the crew looked at the screen. The test had begun. The moment the strange symbols flashed across the screen, Captain Elias Grant knew they were in for something unlike any challenge humanity had ever faced. The code was intricate, almost beautiful in its complexity, and it seemed to shimmer with an unnatural energy. It wasn't just a puzzle. It felt like a riddle wrapped in mystery, designed to probe the very core of human understanding. Grant's fingers hovered over the console. He had faced many tests in his career, but nothing like this. "Get me a translation now," he ordered, his voice sharp, though his mind was racing with uncertainty. Lieutenant Briggs, sitting at her station, worked quickly, trying to decode the symbols. Her fingers flew over her console as she scanned the sequences. The room was dead silent except for the soft tapping of her fingers and the hum of the ship's systems. "We've got something," she said after a moment, her voice tense. "It's not a language we've ever seen, but there's a pattern. It's like it's alive. The code adapts. It changes based on how we try to interpret it." Grant frowned. "Alive? You mean it's reacting to us?" "That's what it feels like," Briggs said. "The symbols shift, almost as if they're testing us." A cold shiver ran down Grant's spine. The ancients had warned them that this would be a test, but he hadn't expected anything like this. He felt as if they were on the edge of something far greater than a mere trial. This wasn't about a puzzle. It was a measure of how humanity thought, how they adapted, how they could overcome the unknown. "This isn't just a test of intelligence," Grant said slowly, realization dawning on him. "It's a test of us, our ability to handle what we don't understand." Briggs nodded, her face tense with concentration. "Exactly. And it's not just the fleet. It's all of us. We have to figure this out together." As she spoke, a new image appeared on the screen, an ancient symbol that glowed faintly, shifting in the dark space of the console. It resembled an eye, watching them. Grant's heart skipped a beat. "It's watching us," he muttered. The figure of the ancient, still floating as a hologram before the fleet, spoke again. Its voice was calm, almost soothing, but the words carried weight. "You see now. This is not just about a code. It is about understanding. It is about connection. Solve it, and you will show that humanity is ready for what comes next. Grant felt the pressure building. The eyes of the fleet were on him now, their hopes resting on his shoulders. The puzzle wasn't just about technology or intellect. It was about understanding the way forward, the future of humanity. He glanced at his crew, all working together now, their minds focused on the task ahead. They were connected, united in purpose. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to come together, to adapt and innovate when faced with the unknown. "Captain," Briggs called out, "I think I have it." Grant stepped closer to her console, his eyes scanning the symbols as they rearranged themselves into a new form. A message appeared, clear and simple. The path to knowledge begins with trust. Only by trusting each other will you find the key. Grant exhaled in relief, but his mind was still racing. He knew this was just the beginning. The test had been passed, but the ancient's words echoed in his mind. Only by trusting each other will you find the key. Humanity had been tested, but now the real journey was about to begin. The path ahead would require more than just intelligence. It would require unity, courage, and a willingness to face the unknown together. As the message from the ancient ship flickered on the screen, Captain Elias Grant felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. The crew had passed the first test, solving the complex code that had seemed so daunting. Yet the ancient's words lingered in his mind. Only by trusting each other will you find the key. It wasn't just a puzzle to be solved. It was a challenge to their very way of thinking, a reminder that humanity's strength didn't come from technology alone, but from their unity and determination. Grant stood tall, looking at his officers. "This was just the beginning," he said, his voice steady but firm. "The ancients are not here to guide us. They are here to see if we can guide ourselves." Lieutenant Marla Briggs, who had worked tirelessly to decode the puzzle, nodded thoughtfully. "It feels like they're pushing us to rely on our own instincts, Captain. It's not just about what we can do, but about what we're willing to risk together." "Exactly," Grant replied. "Whatever comes next, we face it as one." The bridge fell into a deep silence, the weight of the test hanging in the air. Then the holographic figure of the ancient spoke again, its voice serene but powerful. "Your journey has only just begun, humans. We will now offer you a choice. A series of trials will test your wisdom, your resolve, and your strength. The first trial will test your judgment. The second will test your loyalty. The third will test your courage." Grant felt his heart skip a beat. They had been warned of trials, but now that the moment had arrived, the gravity of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. "What exactly are these trials?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with urgency. The ancient's figure shifted slightly, its glowing eyes fixed on him. "You will find out soon enough, Captain. The trials are not what you expect, nor what you fear. They are what you need." Without another word, the figure vanished, leaving the crew to prepare for whatever lay ahead. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Every officer was deep in thought, wondering what these trials would reveal about themselves, their choices, and their future. A series of holographic displays appeared on the main screen, outlining the first trial. It was simple, at first glance. A simulated environment, a small colony of humans on an alien planet, surrounded by hostile forces. The objective was clear: protect the colony at all costs. But as the simulation began, the true nature of the trial became evident. The attacking force wasn't just an enemy. It was a mirror of humanity's own flaws. It was made up of creatures that acted on greed, fear, and selfishness, traits that humanity had fought to overcome. The crew watched, unsure of how to proceed. Captain Grant knew they couldn't fight the simulation head-on. They had to find another way, something that would reflect humanity's true strength. "Think," Grant barked, his voice sharp. "This is not about brute force. It's about how we approach the challenge. What do we value? What will we sacrifice?" As the crew began to think deeper about the situation, the message became clear. This trial wasn't just about winning. It was about understanding the nature of sacrifice and the decisions humanity had to make to preserve the greater good. Lieutenant Briggs turned to Grant, her eyes filled with determination. "We need to protect the colony by any means necessary, but without becoming what we're fighting against." Grant nodded. "Exactly. We'll find a way to protect them and still stay true to who we are." The clock was ticking. The trial had begun, and their choices would define humanity's path forward. The simulation played out on the large screen before Captain Elias Grant and his crew, the challenge laid out before them. They had chosen a path of strategy, not force, to protect the colony. The attacking forces, though fierce and relentless, were no longer simply enemies. They were a reflection of humanity's darkest instincts: greed, fear, and the desire to dominate. Grant paced back and forth on the bridge, his mind racing. The ancients had warned them that these trials weren't just tests of skill or power. They were tests of who humanity truly was, at its core. It was clear now that this was more than just a game. The choices they made here would shape their future and determine whether they were worthy of the knowledge the ancients had promised. "We can't fight them the way they fight us," Grant muttered to himself. "That's exactly what they want." Lieutenant Briggs, still staring at the simulation, spoke up. "Captain, what if we didn't just protect the colony? What if we made them see us, showed them what makes us different from the creatures they're mimicking?" Grant stopped pacing and turned to her. "What are you thinking?" "We're not like them," Briggs said, her voice steady. "We don't have to fight like them. Maybe the way we win is by showing the attacking force that we have something they don't: empathy. We can make them see that they're attacking because they don't understand what it means to protect something. They don't know how to value life the way we do." Grant considered her words for a moment. She was right. The simulation wasn't asking them to defeat the attackers with force. It was asking them to show what made humanity unique: their ability to empathize, to care for others even when it was difficult, even when it seemed impossible. "All right," Grant said, his voice firm. "Let's do it. We'll protect the colony, but we'll also show the attackers what we're made of. We'll lead by example, not by violence." The crew worked together to implement the new strategy. Instead of engaging the attackers head-on, they focused on saving the colony's civilians, guiding them to safety in hidden shelters. They communicated with the attackers, attempting to find a peaceful resolution, offering them alternatives to violence. As they did, something unexpected happened. The attacking force, which had initially seemed mindless and relentless, began to hesitate. The creatures began to slow, their movements uncertain, as if they were confused by humanity's compassion. Briggs watched in awe as the attackers stopped charging, their aggression faltering. The simulation responded to their actions, changing once more. It was as if the attacking force, for the first time, was seeing humanity in a new light. "We're doing it," Briggs whispered, almost in disbelief. They're listening." Captain Grant allowed himself a small smile. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for understanding." The simulation continued to shift, evolving with their actions. The attackers, once fierce and unyielding, began to retreat. The tension on the bridge began to fade, but the message was clear. The trial had been about more than just victory. It had been about humanity's capacity for empathy, for seeing beyond violence and embracing the better parts of their nature. As the simulation ended and the screen faded to black, the crew felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had passed the test, not by defeating their enemies, but by showing them what made humanity different: the ability to care, to understand, and to seek peace even in the face of destruction. But even as they celebrated, Grant knew this was just the beginning. The ancients were watching, and the next trial would test them even further. The crew had proven something about themselves today, but what they would face next could be far more difficult to overcome. The feeling of victory from the previous trial was still fresh in the air, But it didn't take long for the crew of Vanguard to realize that the real test was far from over. The ancients, with their cryptic warnings and strange trials, had only just begun to challenge humanity's strength. Captain Elias Grant knew it. The calm that followed the success was only temporary. The fleet had been moved to a new location, still under the watchful eyes of the ancients. They were now approaching a massive space station floating silently at the edge of the galaxy. Its sleek design was both beautiful and intimidating, a symbol of an advanced civilization that had outlasted entire eras. As the fleet docked with the station, a strange feeling washed over Grant. It wasn't just the scale of the station, or its eerie silence. It was something more. He could feel the presence of the ancients surrounding them, watching their every move. "I don't like this," Lieutenant Briggs said quietly, breaking the silence. "Something feels off." Grant turned to face her, his face stern. "I agree. We've passed their tests so far, but it feels like they're pushing us towards something more dangerous." The crew continued their preparations, boarding the space station. The long corridors were empty, their cold, metallic walls reflecting the shadows of the crew as they moved cautiously forward. It felt like a place that had been abandoned for centuries, though there were no signs of wear. The lights flickered in an unnatural pattern, as if something, or someone, was manipulating them. It wasn't long before the crew encountered a group of figures standing in the station's central chamber. Their faces were hidden behind shadowed helmets, their bodies encased in sleek armor. They were not human, but their presence was undeniably powerful. The ancients had sent them, no doubt. But what was their purpose? The figures spoke in unison, their voices as cold and emotionless as the station itself. "You have passed the first 2 trials," one said. "Now you must face the final test." Grant stepped forward, his voice steady but cautious. "What is this final test?" A pause filled the room. Then one of the armored figures removed its helmet, revealing an unfamiliar alien face. Yet it was strangely human in its expression. The figure's eyes locked with Grant's. "This test is one of loyalty," the figure said. "Your loyalty to your crew. Your loyalty to the truth. Your loyalty to your people." Grant frowned. "What does that mean?" The figure's voice dropped lower, and the rest of the figures stepped aside, revealing a massive, intricate device hidden behind them. It was unlike anything Grant had ever seen, complex, deadly-looking, and obviously powerful. The figure pointed to the device. "This is the key to your survival, Captain. But to use it, you must make a choice. A member of your crew must be sacrificed. One of them will be chosen by you, and their life will end so the rest may continue. This is the test of your loyalty." Grant's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced, and a cold sweat ran down his spine. He had faced many challenges in his career, but this was a test of morality that he had never imagined. A choice between the life of one and the survival of all. His crew, his family in the stars, was staring at him, waiting for him to make the call. The silence stretched out, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like 1,000 tons. Was this truly a test of loyalty? Or was it a cruel game, meant to expose humanity's darkest instincts? Captain Grant felt his resolve begin to crack. He was being forced to make an impossible choice, and the truth was more complicated than he could have ever imagined. Before he could respond, a voice interrupted. "Captain," said Lieutenant Briggs, stepping forward, "we don't have to make this choice. We can find another way." The crew's eyes were all on her. Grant's heart surged with hope, but in the back of his mind, a darker thought began to take root. Had this been the ancients' plan all along, to force them into a corner where they would have no choice but to betray what they believed? The tension was unbearable, and the weight of the moment threatened to tear apart everything they had fought for. The Eclipse-class dreadnought was a ship unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was massive, covered in strange metal that shifted colors under the dim light of the dying star. Inside, human engineers worked day and night, trying to understand the technology left behind by the Vakar. Admiral Lilina Vasquez stood on the command deck, watching the progress. Her chief engineer, Lieutenant Darren Cho, wiped sweat from his forehead as he approached. "We have a problem, Admiral," he said. "This ship was never meant for beings like us. Its core systems require something different." Elena crossed her arms. "Explain." Cho hesitated. "The Vakar built this ship using technology beyond our understanding. Their machines were connected to their minds, their very biology. If we activate the dreadnought as it is, it might reject us. We need to make changes, merge our systems with theirs." Silence filled the room. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Merging human minds with alien technology, it was dangerous, maybe even deadly. "What are the risks?" Elena asked. "We don't know," Cho admitted. "It could rewrite how our brains work. It could kill the pilot instantly, or it could do nothing at all. But if we don't take the risk, we have no chance against the Nemesis entity." Elena looked out the viewport at the black void of space. The entity was coming. Every second they hesitated, it drew closer. She knew humanity couldn't win a normal war against it. Their weapons were useless. Their ships would be torn apart. The only chance they had was this dreadnought. She turned back to Cho. "Find volunteers." Within hours, a group of the best pilots and engineers gathered in the ship's core chamber. At its center was the neural throne, a seat surrounded by glowing wires and floating symbols. It pulsed with unknown energy. Commander Raj Patel, a seasoned pilot, stepped forward. "I'll do it." Elena nodded. "You don't have to, Raj." "I know," he said, placing a hand on the throne. "But someone has to." He sat down, and the machine came alive. Wires snaked around his arms. Symbols burned into his skin. His eyes widened as his mind connected to something vast, something ancient. "I can see it," he whispered. "The ship is talking to me. It's awake." The Eclipse-class dreadnought roared to life. Engines that had been silent for millennia ignited. Weapons beyond human comprehension powered up. The ship was ready. Elena felt a chill. "What do you see, Raj?" His voice was distant. "The Vakar. They were afraid. They built this ship to fight the Nemesis, but they never finished it. They failed." "And us?" Elena asked. Raj smiled. "We won't." The countdown to battle had begun. The Eclipse-class dreadnought moved forward, leaving the safety of the Dyson sphere. It was no longer just an ancient relic. It was a weapon of war, reborn with human ingenuity. Admiral Lilina Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the dark void ahead. The Nemesis entity was coming. Commander Raj Patel sat in the neural throne, his mind connected to the ship. The alien technology pulsed through his veins, filling his mind with visions of the past. The Vakar had feared this moment. But humans were different. "Enemy detected." Lieutenant Darren Cho shouted. "It's here." Space twisted and bent as the Nemesis entity arrived. It was not a fleet. It was a living storm, a massive black cloud filled with glowing red eyes and shifting tendrils. It moved like liquid, consuming light itself. The remains of ancient ships, those who had failed before, floated within its mass. The human fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma cannons, railguns, and missiles shot toward the entity. Explosions rippled across its surface, but they did nothing. The Nemesis simply absorbed the energy, growing stronger. "Weapons are useless," a lieutenant shouted. "It's adapting." Elena's hands tightened into fists. "Raj, we need that dreadnought's weapon systems now." Inside the neural throne, Raj's body shook as the Eclipse whispered its secrets to him. His vision blurred between past and present. He saw the Vakar's last moments, their desperate fight. But he also saw something else, a chance to win. "I see it," he said, "the key to victory." The Eclipse's main weapon charge. At the front of the ship, a strange energy field began forming. A weapon not of fire or metal, but of pure entropy reversal. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A beam of white light shot forward, cutting through space itself. It struck the Nemesis entity, and for the first time in its existence, it screamed. The creature recoiled, its form breaking apart where the energy touched it. But the entity was not finished. It retaliated. A tendril of darkness lashed out, wrapping around the Eclipse-class dreadnought. The ship shook violently, warning alarms blaring. The Nemesis was trying to corrupt the systems, to pull the ship into its own reality. Raj gritted his teeth. His mind burned as the entity's whispers filled his thoughts. It was trying to erase him, to consume his very soul. "No," he growled. "You will not have us." He pushed the dreadnought beyond its limits, activating the ship's last unknown function, a temporal rift drive. The Eclipse vanished for a fraction of a second, slipping through time and space. When it reappeared, the tendrils were gone. "Raj, are you still with us?" Elena shouted. His voice came weak but firm. "Still here, Admiral. And I know how to end this." The final strike was coming. The Eclipse-class dreadnought hovered in the darkness, its energy core burning bright. The Nemesis entity writhed before it, wounded but still alive. The battle was not over yet. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood firm on the bridge, her eyes locked on the monstrous being outside. The human fleet was damaged but standing. Destroyers and battleships formed a defensive wall, shielding the dreadnought as it prepared for the final strike. "Raj, you said you know how to end this." Elena spoke through the comms. "Tell me we have a plan." Commander Raj Patel sat in the neural throne, his body weak but his mind stronger than ever. The ship and he were one now. The ancient knowledge of the Vakar flowed through him. And in that knowledge, he had found the answer. "We can't just kill the Nemesis," Raj said. "It's not a normal enemy. It's a wound in reality itself. But the Eclipse has something the Vakar never used, a way to seal it forever." Elena's heart pounded. "Explain." "The Rift Core," Raj answered. "It can create a singularity, a prison outside time and space. But there's a problem." Elena already knew. Someone has to stay behind. Silence fell over the bridge. The Rift Core needed a living pilot to activate the sequence. Whoever did it wouldn't survive. Raj exhaled. "It has to be me." Elena clenched her fists. "No, we'll find another way." Raj smiled weakly. "There is no other way, Admiral. The Vakar failed because they hesitated. Humanity wins because we don't." The Nemesis lashed out again, tendrils of darkness slamming into the human fleet. A battleship exploded. The entity was regaining strength. There was no more time. "Raj, are you sure?" Elena whispered. "Yes." He placed his hands on the throne. "Tell Earth. Tell them we did the impossible." Then he activated the Rift Core. A brilliant tear in reality opened at the heart of the dreadnought. The ship trembled as massive energy waves surged outward. The Nemesis entity screamed, sensing what was coming. It tried to retreat, but it was too late. The singularity pulled it in. Tendrils shattered. The red eyes dimmed. The darkness collapsed into itself. The Eclipse-class dreadnought, with Raj still inside, was pulled into the vortex. His final words echoed through the comms. "For humanity." Then the singularity closed, sealing the Nemesis away forever. The battlefield fell silent. The human fleet drifted in space, staring at the empty void where the greatest enemy had once existed. Admiral Elena Vasquez took a deep breath. Raj was gone. The Eclipse was gone. But humanity had won. She turned to her crew. "We go home." Earth would know the name Raj Patel, the man who saved the galaxy. The battlefield was quiet now. Where the Nemesis entity had once loomed, there was only empty space. The Eclipse-class dreadnought was gone, lost inside the singularity along with Commander Raj Patel. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the void. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but at a great cost. The remaining ships of the human fleet sent out distress signals. Many were damaged, their crews exhausted and injured. Fires burned inside wrecked cruisers, and escape pods floated silently among the debris. But they were alive. Lieutenant Darren Cho approached Alina. His face was pale, his uniform stained with blood and soot. "Admiral, we're getting messages from Earth. They're waiting for news." Alina nodded slowly. "Send a transmission." The communications officer activated the long-range beacon. Alina took a deep breath, then spoke. "This is Admiral Vasquez of the United Terran Fleet. The Nemesis entity is destroyed. The battle is won. Humanity stands victorious. Asterisk, asterisk. A wave of cheers erupted across the fleet. Even the wounded, even those mourning lost friends, found hope in those words. But for Alina, victory felt hollow. She turned back toward the void. Raj Patel was gone. The man who had sacrificed himself so that the galaxy could live. A hero. Then, the ancient AI, Arkish, spoke from the Dyson sphere. Its voice echoed across the comms, deep and emotionless. "You have done what the Vakar could not." Alina looked at the screen. "We finished what they started." "Yes," Arkish said. "And now, their legacy is yours." A new signal appeared on the fleet's scanners, a massive hidden archive within the Dyson sphere. Data flowed in like a tidal wave, containing centuries of Vakar knowledge, technology, science, secrets of the universe. Humanity had inherited the treasures of those who came before. Lieutenant Cho gasped, "Admiral, this changes everything." Alina didn't smile. "Yes, it does." The fleet prepared for departure. Engineers stabilized damaged ships, medical crews tended to the wounded, and officers recorded the names of the fallen. The human race had survived its greatest challenge. But they were no longer just survivors. They were something more. As the fleet turned toward Earth, Alina whispered to herself, "Raj, you didn't just save us. You made us stronger." The stars stretched before them, filled with endless possibilities, and humanity was ready.